Welcome to Architect of Things, where we explore the ideas and innovations shaping the spaces we call home. The inspiration behind Architect of Things comes from the traditions of architecture, a practice grounded in physical reality and now converging with the intersectionalities of culture, technology, and human experience. I'm Lira Luis, an American architect for open-minded business owners who want spaces that truly work. I'm also a triple fellow of the RIBA, the Royal Society of Arts, and Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin Fellowship, having earned my Master of Architecture degree at the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture. I serve as incumbent counselor of the RSA in the US, where Nobel laureates and Pritzker Architecture Prize laureates sit among my fellow members. Today, I'm honored to host Dr. Yasmeen Lari, Pakistan's first woman architect, 2023 RIBA Royal Gold Medal laureate, former deputy chair of the Architects Regional Council Asia, Jose Rizal Heritage Award honoree, and recently Lisbon Architecture Triennale's 2025 Millennium BCP Lifetime Achievement Awardee, and the humanitarian force behind large-scale, zero-carbon, community-built housing using vernacular materials. In her RIBA Gold Medal lecture, Saving Humanity, Saving the Planet, she reframed architecture as service to the other 99%. So together, we'll explore how her four zeros, zero carbon, zero waste, zero donor, and zero poverty can help transform existing building stock in developed regions and leapfrog unsustainable models where most of 2050's buildings are still to come, while also responding to uneven climate burdens between the North Pole and the equator. So, Dr. Yasmeen, what was the inflection point that moved you from landmark commercial commissions into what you call barefoot social architecture? What did you have to unlearn from conventional practice to make that pivot?
Well, Lira, it was a long time ago, right? It was the year 2000. There were many things that happened. As architects, we are trained basically to just whoever somebody commissions you, whatever they ask, you try to comply with their demands and what they need. You can be very creative, you can have your own way of doing things, but finally, you have to fulfill their requirements. And you feel that you can only move and do things once you are commissioned to do that. And as I began to understand a little bit more about the reality of my own country, Pakistan, and I've not worked anywhere else except in Pakistan, as you might know, never wanted to. Um, and I began to think that, there were things that I had not understood. There were the level of poverty, the level of deprivation was there. And somehow I didn't feel that I could do anything about it. But I also felt that because I'd done a lot of work in terms of documentation, and my husband, who actually has been a business executive, had earned his PPE, Politics, Philosophy, and Economics at the University of Oxford in England. And he had sold his company and he decided to write books. And that was the right thing to do, I felt, because we had amassed a lot of material in terms of heritage. He'd been photographing a lot of stuff, a lot of historic buildings. I had been studying a lot of it, documenting a lot of, historic places. And I felt there was a lot of material that we needed to put together that I also needed to now start doing my books. I had done a couple of them, but not enough. And I thought that way I could probably serve better than just pandering to the taste of, these rich clients or the corporate sector, that money was no object. You could just carry on, do what you wanted. And that was not the real Pakistan. I'm sure I did the right thing in just deciding I didn't want to have anything to do with it anymore.
And so then you mentioned specifically the corporate projects. What did that moment teach you about dignity in design when you made that pivot that you still apply every day?
Well, I'd been very lucky to have been a professional in my own country, even though people might feel that I might be at a disadvantage because I was a woman, but that's not quite so. I think I managed to do many things which maybe a male architect might not have been able to do. I was able to, even in very early days of my own practice, I was able to work on social housing and got to know about women and what their needs were. I had this good fortune of having this particular commission to design social housing, which provided me the first opportunity really to interact with that class. Because, as things are, as we are with good fortune, we live in a different world, which is well away from what everybody else is around is about. But that gave me the opportunity not to get down from my high horse and go and see and talk to women and try to understand what their concerns were. And because I was a woman, I was able to do that, and also I could design for their needs, perhaps more sensitively than perhaps male architects could have or do possibly. I don't know, but this is what I believe in. And so I think I got this opportunity. I also worked a little bit in a slum or two. I also worked with the large scale resettlement project of trying to settle people in the same people who were in the slums in the same area rather than moving them to another place. So I'd had these experiences, and Allah Hassan Fatihi, I was a great admirer for I don't know how many years. I also managed to build a couple of buildings in mud. So even before my corporate sector work, I had really had experiences of that kind. Then also, if you might know about my work, I had been able to do a lot of work in heritage, and that was about trying to understand myself because I'd lived a very kind of isolated, privileged kind of a life, the way many of us have done. And now, of course, I feel very guilty about it, but that's how it was. And that meant that we had highly colonized minds because the British had just left and left this whole, concept of Western supremacy in culture and everything. And so we always look towards them to tell us what should be the right way for us to do. And then, of course, I went to England for studies. And as an architect, again, you are it's drilled in your head that you know what is better. You know how things should be. You are the designer. And then too, it was all Western concepts that were there in my mind. And then when I got home, I got married by that time, and my husband had been more like a people's person. I was able to go with him and look at different our historic towns, or basically the monuments, and I was stunned to see how fabulous and how amazing they were. So really, this was a whole search that I went on for decades actually to try to understand what my own roots were. So all the documentation, all the work we did in terms of understanding or writing, it was all to do with that. And I think that gave me a good focus on how I needed to work within my own country. But it's only Pakistan that I think allows a woman to be able to do, to have so many different kind of, aspects in the work that is there because there's so much there that needs to be done. So I was very lucky that I was born here. I was very lucky that I got all these opportunities. And yeah, and it's been a lot of fun all the way. Oh.
And then your four zeros, they read like a decision framework. So how do you apply them in two very different contexts? Like, say, transforming existing stock in mature cities, which you experienced and encountered while you were studying in England, which were deep upgrades, adaptive reuse, urban mining, and you were leapfrogging technically to new growth in fast urbanizing regions from day one. So what were your four zeros in that decision framework, and how do you apply them in two very different contexts?
Okay. Well, Lira, of course, in those days, the studies and what was happening in the UK or all over the West was quite different. There was nothing about urban mining. There was nothing about repurposing buildings. There was nothing about carbon or whatever we concern or circular economy. It all, of course, has come much later, more in recent times. At that time, of course, it was all about the most fantastic and most outrageous kind of uh, kind of structures that you could build, whatever your imagination could lead you to, and so on. So that's how I'd come back to do the amazing things, and I carried on trying to do that, I guess, in a sense, and I got the opportunities. But once I was at the Lahore Fort as UNESCO's national advisor. After I retired from practice, that taught me a lot of things about the use of lime, about the value of heritage, about the spaces and how you could use zero energy solutions for cooling, for heating, all kinds of things. And that amazing kind of, again, experience, a very privileged kind of life, I might say. Not everybody gets a chance to live for 3 years in a fort of that kind of, magnificence. So I did. And then, of course, the earthquake happened. And that's what brought the real Pakistan into my life, actually, which I had not known, in fact.
Mhm.
And so since 2025, that's now 2 decades, actually. So, the time has just gone past so fast that I've been working in the humanitarian field. And that has been the most satisfying work that I've ever done in my life. And I've done many very interesting, kind of projects and aspects in my life. So this is something that I feel has taught me so much about my own country, but about my own self as well. And to see how we relate to today's challenges, which are to do with climate change, with global warming, with trying to see how do you conserve rather than waste, and that kind of thing. So it's working with people, learning from tradition and from what we call age-old wisdom, that I have understood that much can be done with no resources whatsoever. In fact, no normal financial resources that we think of. The capitalist system is not necessarily working for us where there's so much poverty. And so my 4 zeros have come about because of all that work, which is to do with the zero carbon, zero waste, zero donor dependence, and then that leads to zero poverty. Because as you know, there are billions of people who have nothing today in this world. I believe 60 people in the world hold all the wealth, mostly probably in America, of at least 2/3 of the world population. So this is where we are. Everything is skewed against the poor. Injustice is galore. I mean, you cannot even begin to think how they survive. I don't know how they survive, although I work with them.
Mhm. And then where's the
This is where I
line?
am now.
Yes, and where is the line between support and dependence, and how do you keep programs on the self-reliance side?
Well, it's not that complicated. You have to first give up all the funds, okay? Forget about money. Yeah, that's got to be your starting point. Yeah, so as long as you're going to rely on something to come in, well, then it doesn't work because you're constantly thinking, well, somebody will come and help out, but it doesn't happen in many countries, okay? And this international colonial charity model that really is like a colonial, I mean, it really is a colonial way of saying, we'll give you something and you'll be okay. Well, it doesn't work
Mhm.
because it's never worked. People's self-esteem. And I have this kind of I don't know what to call it, but uh, uh, it's a kind of a framework, if you like, that there's what I call a system called barefoot ecosystem, which is to do with the poor, because I reckon there are more poor in my country than the other ones. I mean, there's something like as at least 75% of my country people are poor, and 50% are below the poverty line. So there are more of them, obviously. So there's barefoot market, there's a barefoot economy, there's a barefoot entrepreneurs, enterprises, barefoot products, everything to do with the poor. And if you tap those resources, then suddenly a huge market opens up. And once you start thinking how to, unlock the potential in poverty, then you don't need any money because the potential is huge. The people alone, the resource of people alone is unbelievable. The resources, the natural resources that we endowed with. I mean, if you go to the countryside, there's so much there that you can use. That's all I use for my buildings. Then there's so much waste that you can use. That is all around you and never been taken seriously. And the skill of people, like the women have such enormous creativity. Well, nobody's bothered to look at it. Why not? These are all resources. And so you don't need any money. You can just do without it then.
And also along
Yeah.
those lines, you've proven that lime, mud, bamboo, and other vernacular systems can be precise, safe, and beautiful. So which specific strategies should Western retrofit programs can probably adopt now? And where do you see productivity hybrids with modern quality assurance, prefabrication, or digital tools?
Quite right. Well, that's of course a very difficult question to answer, Lira, because the rules are and the bylaws are so strict and firm in their place that it looks like they can never move. And I mean, when we think of building with structures that cannot be engineered, they're non-engineered structures, but they can be tested. So we should go ahead and test a lot of stuff, even if you can't calculate. In the past, nothing was calculated. If Sana could build four-story high mud buildings and still survive centuries, well, why is it that the similar kind of things can't be done? And there's so many instances in in historic towns all over the world, actually, and so many examples of how people have built with literally nothing, but really, you know, structures that have endured for centuries. And
Like the
cement, of course,
pyramids.
the
The
pyramids,
pyramid.
of course. And the fact that cement wasn't there, it was done, a lot was done with lime. I mean, look at the aqueducts in Rome. I mean, just look at that. So there's so much that is there. I mean, our own forts, of 16th, 17th century, they were all built with lime. Nobody used cement, which is the most destructive material that I know of, which is high carbon. It absorbs no water. It's totally not permeable at all, and it emits heat all the time. So it's nothing could be worse for us in our environment, but we continue using it. So I'm just proposing that we should now reset our way of thinking about materials. That we look at maybe in the interim, maybe a hybrid structure if we can't do without high carbon, maybe a frame. But on the other hand, you can have all zero carbon, low carbon finishes or infill. And so you reduce the carbon footprint. I mean, the whole purpose should be how do you reduce the carbon footprint of our structures? So certainly repurposing buildings, certainly circular economy, certainly urban mining, certainly all these are very good things to happen. But also you have to look at the ecological impact of everything as well. So why not bring more nature into the cities? Why are we separating nature from urban areas? Why are we uh, subjecting people to what I call ecological tyranny in these congested environments in cities like mine, for instance, in Karachi? It's impossible to breathe. The air is so polluted. And why don't we have nature within the streets? Why do we not stop vehicles as much as possible? I mean, I want my each street in the different neighborhoods to become eco streets with which are forested streets. So
Mhm.
you can grow food, you can have children playing there, you can have mothers sitting there. Otherwise, there's no place for women or children in cities anymore because all our urban spaces have been usurped by all these powerful people. So what do we do? Well, let's convert all our streets into eco streets. One street at a time is all I want. If that can be done, we'll transform our living conditions. I mean, the whole thing is what is it that we need for people to have a kind of healthy and a good life and for their well-being rather than the well-being of the rich or people who amass wealth or I don't know. I mean, why are we bothered about them? They're okay. They don't need us. But we can, all designers should be now working for these others who don't have anything, but they will appreciate design more and they need more design in their lives than the rich do. So
Probably they would be able to understand what design can do for them in that way as well. So you
oh,
were
they are,
saying,
yeah, absolutely. They are themselves very creative. I mean, you do one thing and they'll go 10 steps ahead. It's amazing the kind of creative powers of women that I've seen in my rural areas is mind-boggling. I mean, there are 1 million of my earthen, stoves. They're called Pakistan Chula. They've been built. Each one is different. Each one is unique. It's amazing that I don't know where it's coming from. They're so poor, you would feel they have nothing. But they have this amazing sense of design and color, and it's all organic colors, whatever they can muster from around them.
Mm.
So there's much that is there that can be done. We don't need money. We don't need rich people. We can just do it with ourselves. If designers were to join hands with the poor of the world, my God, we'll change the world.
Mhm. And then for their comfort and health, what occupancy, post-occupancy results, like say indoor air, passive cooling. I know, it's almost tropical, the environment in
I'm
Pakistan.
losing now.
Passive
I
cooling,
lost you.
thermal comfort, most
Yeah.
surprise the skeptics when they see what they've built. So,
Absolutely. I mean, I've done the testing for our basic bamboo structure, which has lining of two matting on the two sides and just nothing but lime and mud plaster. And I think that there's a difference of at least 15-degree temperature difference between outside and inside. It's better than even masonry, mud masonry, which gives us only about 8-degree temperature difference. And of course, it's way better than, for instance, government-built housing that is now going on in my country for the people who are affected by 2020 floods, that they built with the brick, with burnt brick and with cement concrete blocks, and 3-degree temperature higher temperature inside than outside. It's worse living inside a house. So we should be thinking about people's comfort, not about, how grand the whole stuff is. Because we have to change the definition of what is good, what is well designed, you know? It's not the urban kind of concept of how tall buildings and, I don't know, multi-story structures and lots of boulevards and lots of, just cars and vehicles. Well, I don't think that works anymore. We need to go back to, I would like to go back to our old towns, which are kind of, medium density, low rise, pedestrian walkways like you do in Europe, where, I mean, in Europe too, they've had a fantastic tradition. Why is it being giving up? I mean, if you go to Netherlands, I mean, I happened to go to Delft and I happened to go to Rotterdam for the first time in these two places. And it was amazing the difference. I mean, Delft was full of, for me, full of character. And Rotterdam was totally colorless. No?
mhm.
Why are we forgetting about our own traditions? I don't know.
I remember when I produced the Global Inclusion Reception for Architects in the US, there were no institute grants or municipal budgets behind it. I built it entirely through my personal network, which is barter based, in kind collaboration with no cash flow. And it was successful and well attended. I also used the same transparent, no public funds approach for the Leapfrog from Disaster Symposium, again, successful and well attended, keeping the work nimble and free of any procurement or contracting entanglements. So, with that in mind, in your programs, women become entrepreneurs, not beneficiaries. So, what design and delivery choices ensure women capture income, safety, credit, and leadership while staying true to a zero donor ethos of self reliance?
Well, I learned long time ago, especially when I was working in the earthquake area of 2005, major earthquake, 80,000 lives were lost, 400,000 families were displaced, and women had been left to grieve by themselves. There was nobody they could talk to even because these are hillocks and they were all dispersed kind of locations, so you're isolated. And the relief team that came had no females in them. And men could be going out and they were receiving bags of, I don't know, wheat or, whatever goods that they were getting. Women were cooped up, and they were not cooped up actually, they were sitting in the middle of this debris all around them, having lost their dear ones just, a couple of weeks ago. I mean, when I went there, I went about a week after. They've been just sitting there in the open. No protection of any kind, and no way to grieve even about their losses. Because nobody had been there for them. So as a woman, I found I could go. I had the advantage. I could go and talk to them. And the trauma that they've gone through. it, I don't think people realize how much trauma women go through with all this, with losses, whether it's their goods, whether it's their dear ones or whatever, and just the displacement from their homes and having to go and just live somewhere out in the open, basically, you know? I
Mhm.
mean, it's a total tragedy. Their life is just full of tragedies. And so I understood. And we began this very simple program. I found that they would make these very beautiful bead bracelets and other things, other kind of jewelry. And we started a program. And then that's how they overcame their own grief by getting involved in something useful. They started to earn money and men became proud of them. So since then I learned I have to put women always in the lead. They're the ones who will, because they are hankering after dignity. So if I say, you need to have a platform for your stove and you sit up there and then they suddenly feel that, they're sitting on a throne rather than sitting on this floor which is full of dirt. And suddenly everybody is there to come and they are giving out this clean food. I mean, it's another feeling altogether. And they have agency because then they decorate everything to create another world for themselves just on that little earthen platform. Sometimes little, sometimes very large, actually, but beautifully decorated, absolutely amazing, with celestial figures and garden flowers, and so another world. And if
Mhm.
there's a house, then they're the ones who need it. They need shelter for their kids and themselves. They need to live in a protective place. If it's toilets, millions are without any toilets in my country. It's women who need that. It is for their dignity. It's for their own privacy. It's for their own protection. So they're the ones who will lead every time. They're the ones who lead everything. And when you see the confidence that develops, I mean, it's amazing. Yep.
Mhm. So obviously you introduced a new way of thinking to them. How do you structure the training and quality assurance so skills are portable, recognized, and paid eventually without introducing dependency or external agendas?
Yeah, well, I think it's very important for us to think about these issues. And I know of architects such as John Turner, who did phenomenal work at one time, if you will recall, and I think it was in the 80s, late 70s, 80s. And he had talked about self-building and co-building, all the rest of it. And somehow he did do some in Latin America, but didn't go much further because people said, well, how will you control quality? No, it can't be done. No, they can be, et cetera, et cetera. So there were lots of ifs and buts. And so, of course, I was conscious of all that when I was working because when you do something to scale, then you have to make sure that quality is assured, right? And of course, I didn't have the luxury like I did in my all these fancy buildings where I could have several layers of supervisors who could be, checking everything. And here, what had to do was to make something that could be self-controlling, if you like, or making sure that the quality would be assured. So that's why I've designed this particular, way of building with the prefabricated bamboo panels. Now, this is
Mhm.
learning from the North Fiji, a type of construction where you have wooden panels and you have them cross-braced, and so they're very resilient and very good, and they survived earthquakes, that kind of building. And so I took that and I translated that into bamboo, but I got them prefabricated. So with prefabrication, you can actually exercise control because then you can tell them exactly how to do. You have trained people who will do it, and then you can be assured. But also, if you design something which is not just a rectangle or a square, like an octagon, then you have to have the plinth right if you want the
Yes.
panels to fit properly. The panels have to be right to fit on that properly. So it's kind of a self-adjusting arrangement. So even if nobody is really looking at carefully, but I think it all works because unless it fits together, you can't really put the roof up, right? And
Mhm.
so that has been working very well. We've done, yeah, quite a lot of those particular kind of structures. And so then prefab bamboo panels is a standard size that we use most of the time. And our prefabricated structures are now being taken anywhere. They can be transported anywhere. So in fact, in 2023, my team developed a mosque with the prefab units and it went off to Jeddah and was exhibited there. In 2024, Qatar had wanted one. So a big center, a big prefab community center with a large dome of 28-foot diameter. I don't know how much meter there is, but 28 foot diameter. diameter. It's quite large for a bamboo dome. That was sent off. They had it up for several months. And then, lo and behold, in Venice, when the Venice Biennale, when it opened, it was put up, dismantled and taken there and put up there as a Qatar pavilion, as an interim Qatar pavilion. So bamboo has this amazing, especially if you do it in that manner that you prefab everything, can have control, you have resilience, you have to know how to tie it together. And the whole thing is that if you will craft it right, then it can last forever.
Let's focus now on the on climate. And obviously materiality is part of that climate approach. Regions between the North Pole and the equator
Well,
face
yeah.
disproportionate sea level rise. So shifting rain belts and flood to drought whiplash. What are your no regret design moves for these zones for water harvesting, shade, ventilation, refuge,
Yeah.
salt intrusion mitigation that belong on every brief?
You're absolutely right, Lira. The challenges are now enormous because the intensity increases every time. You might design for a particular situation, but you don't know next day what might happen. For instance,
Okay.
in 2022, we had this whole flood that 33 million people were displaced and the whole area was underwater. This time, I don't know the figures, but this time when the glaciers melt, this big province of ours was entirely underwater, 2025. And that means half the country, was underwater now. So, and then there was in the north where total kind of areas were completely wiped out, the mountainous areas in Dir and other places. So it's very difficult to now judge, but I think there are still some in the foreseeable future, foreseeable disasters, we should design for them. Now, for
Mm.
instance, in my 1 million families zero donor dependent program, where we reached to 1 million families, they are all flood secure now. At least in the last floods, they were fine. And these were all done after 2022 floods, right? This is that area. And they become food secure. So I've got this poverty escape ladder. How do you live without money? Okay. And in that, within 9 steps, you can be out of poverty. But you have to go step by step, which means that you start with zero hunger to food security, to environmental stewardship, to flood mitigation measures, to income generation of barefoot products, to building toilets, to building houses, to building schools, and etc., etc. And then then finally you're out of poverty. And I'm hoping that by next year, December, that 1 million families, that's about 8 million people, should be out of poverty because we are halfway through.
Okay.
It can be
And
done without money. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort.
yes, and in your
Yes,
process, you've also mentioned earlier to me that you've used open tutorials, messaging groups, technology, that software that's like WhatsApp or Viber, and remote guidance to reach even non-literate builders.
absolutely.
Where does tech or mobile AI assist remote quality assurance best amplify local know-how without displacing it? So if you could open source one pattern language this year, what would it cover, for example?
Well, for my own country, we're already got a lot of stuff, a lot of different kinds of material that's been developed, which is to do with having people assemble in a place and then through Zoom and other methods to train them remotely as to what they must do. And these are the team of people, and 99% are non-literate actually in that part of the of my country, but we have a huge population that is non-literate, so we have to design for that. And women particularly are always left behind, as in many other countries. So, and I need to relate to them all the time. So it's like those training ways, and their videos and their training manuals and their training videos, which show step by step what do you do, how do you do it, how do you mix earth with straw and with cow dung to make up, and with the lime to be able to make make a render for the outside, etc. So it starts from everything. Every little bit is we've got a training video for, which they can watch and they can carry on. And the best thing that we have is the cell phone. That is really the only medium that is now universal. Luckily, we have a Wi-Fi in even these remote areas, so we have access. So it's got to be visual, it's got to be audio, because they can't read, right? And so we are designing accordingly. But also, we've got a lot of data that comes in again through WhatsApp and sharing of these Google Sheets. And so they have to take or do something and it comes back and then it's all recorded in the studio in Karachi. And then there's also messages. Like my messages are going out to the youth. We've got now committees. I've got 1 million men, 1 million women, uh, about 18,000 focal points in each village. I've got 54,000 youth committees, three in each one, I mean, in each village, 54,000 women in my mother's committees. I've got 800 school teachers. I've got 60 mobile preventive healthcare workers. These are all, and then I've got 22, what I call my barefoot brigades, which consist of at least 25 people, experts who go and say how it's to be done and charge a fee. Everybody charges a small fee, but because the scale is so large, they make a lot of money. We reckon there are at least, my team think there might be 100 barefoot millionaires. I think there are at least 50 barefoot millionaires now in, out of this program, the zero donor dependent program.
Mhm. And
And so
then,
these are all people that I can send messages to through the WhatsApp thing, and they're listening.
yes, and it's a demonstration as well of the leapfrogging of the technology. Because imagine you're coordinating with 1 million people, and then now with just the mobile phone. But if you have to do that using conventional telephone
It'll be
lines,
impossible.
that's impossible, right? So, but essentially, you demonstrated you leapfrogged the technology
Yes,
by using that without
that's
using any phone lines, but ACE
that's right.
also disseminate
And
your
social
information.
media. And
Yes.
social media is a very powerful tool now. And also
Mhm.
because my team has now learned how to make avatars. So there are avatars now of our village women as well as mine. And so the messages are going much more easily than they did before. And then, of course, with the AIs, which you can make storybooks and illustrations. So now I'm writing a lot of children's storybooks about what is to be done, how to wash hands, how to rear rabbits, how to grow, vegetables, all kinds of things. There's so many things that they have to be somehow made familiar with. They don't know what they can do themselves. So where there's a lot of deprivation, we have to really keep on sort of, somehow sending communication so they feel that somebody cares for them. I think that's the most important thing. Otherwise, they're left to fend for themselves and they don't know what to do. But now they can see you know, that light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what's important.
And in your work, you did a lot of, and you still do a lot of research. So essentially, you have to almost think like a scientist. So in thinking like scientist, when scaling barefoot methods, your philosophy, what failure modes do you watch out the most, like for materials, workmanship, maintenance codes, and how do you de-risk them? So what multi-year evidence would you most like to see, like say durability, cost curves, emissions, social outcomes, to help cities and funders make probabilistic decisions with confidence?
Well, I think what is most important is, first of all, to somehow give the confidence to people that they can do it themselves. I think unless we do that, they will not be able to, because they've been told that, what can I say? A lot of times when I talk to people, and I talk to these women particularly, women always feel that if there's a disaster, it's been their fault. Whatever wrong has happened, whatever's happened has been their fault somehow. If they had done the right thing, then things would not be so bad. So that's the worst thing. And this is true for every woman who either gets raped or is mistreated or whatever. She feels it's her fault. And first of all, we have to make sure to make them understand it is not their fault. They had nothing to do with what happened. And then to say, how can you then survive yourself? So you'd be surprised. The one that gives women hope is the Pakistan chula, the stove, the earthen stove. As soon as they learn about it, they want to build it, decorate it, and that just gets them going. And suddenly their own respect, they gain more respect in society. Their whole status is raised somehow just by sitting on that earthen platform. So that is our really the way we start now mostly. But then I think what we find in my country, of course, there's a lot of hunger. There's nothing there. There's once the flood 22 to 2022 wiped out everything, there's hardly any jobs and there's not enough to go around. And so there's a lot of illnesses, poverty, lack of water. There's so many things that are not there. And somehow we have to make sure that they gradually have access to it, but they have to do it themselves. Because you
Mhm.
imagine, I have 18,000 villages. There's no clean water, right? We're surviving with the water taken from the canal that is running by the side. Now, that's not even clean water. Okay, it's muddy, it's filthy. And then so there are lots of diseases, but that's all that they can get. So, but where am I going to get 18,000 hand water pumps, even if I gave one in each village, because the government has not provided it? I mean, it's an impossible task. So I have to get them going. So this is what we do. And I said, well, start collecting money, 50 rupees a week. And within 2 weeks, somebody will come and install it, and you then pay after two other installments. So gradually, you get them to do that again from whatever little resources they might have or whatever it is. And so we've got to make them self-reliant. But then here again, growing vegetables plays a very important part that they'd not done before for themselves somehow, for some reason. They had never grown trees in their villages. Now they're growing them and loving doing it. I think we've got at least 4 to 5 million trees from what I'm hearing in these 18,000 villages just planted in the last 2 years. So suddenly all this is happening, which is helping them to control water, at the same time create a better environment for them. There's more shade now. So heat is not that bad. There's also fruit on the trees. So suddenly, it becomes important for them. So they are now loving adding on more greenery and vegetation in their own villages. And then flood mitigation measures. That means you have to make them secure so they're not displaced. So one method is, if they can't build the houses, to build just platforms. And this comes from my Bronze Age city of Mohenjo-daro, which is built on platforms and it's safe. It's lasted for thousands of years. Well, make earthen platforms. They're no cost because they take that. We've taught them how to do them. There are all kinds of platforms. So if it rains and if it even gets flooded, well, you can be on it and you can be safe within your own village. You don't have to go to another higher place. You know what I mean? So just very simple things like that. But then we make a lot of aquifer wells and trenches and stop the water, or a lot of kind of, this kind of thing. A lot of work is being done all over the world of this kind. And then to try and conserve waters. So make small ponds, have some covers with very, very cheap kind of ways of building. So the whole effort to see how do you make the most economical way to do whatever has to be done. Because it's got no, I mean, it's all low tech. There's no machinery, there's no equipment. Everything is done by hand,
Mhm.
right? There's
And,
1
and,
million
and
and
1
yeah.
million, yes, 1 million people that you're helping. You also approach this through partnerships. So, which research partners or public agencies would you most like to collaborate with on that evidence?
In my country, I don't
Yes.
think anybody is interested to do that. I'd be
Okay.
very happy if the government said tomorrow we'll give you we'll just install all the hand pumps. 18,000 villages. My God, it'll transform their lives immediately. But it's not going to happen. I would love it if somebody came and said, okay, we'll set up these, health places in all the villages. So everybody can be safe and not be dying of all kinds of diseases because of lack of just clean water. It's not going to happen. I would love it if somebody came and said, we'll put one school in every village, in 18,000 villages, so all the kids can go to school. Well, I've got 10 million school children now to school in my province alone. 26 million in the whole country. I mean, if the state could do it, I would not have to do it. We would not have to do it. There's something that are right, but those rights are not given to the poor in so many countries. So what do you do? I mean, that's the question. So you can't be just thinking, okay, we'll just design a house and that's enough. That's not enough. That's not everything to do with life. Life is way beyond all that. And everything needs to be properly considered. So you do the most economical, the most kind of, sustainable kind of way of structures. Structures are the key. For everything they do, they need a structure. That's why you need designers. And there's plenty available. We are now working with the sunflower stems. We're working with thin kind of very strong stems of all kinds of plants. And you can make structures out of them. There's a lot of grasses growing. You make matting out of it. You make thatch out of it. You make all kinds of wall panels out of it, which are literally cost nothing.
Mm.
So you can actually do without money.
How could outcome-based or microfinance models even very little money? So I understand the concept of doing this without money, or through barter exchange without cash flow necessarily, but exchange of services or goods. But how could outcome-based or microfinance reward verified performance?
Yeah, a very good question, because Bangladesh has really done so well because of microfinance, because of the Grameen Bank, because of their present chief executive. But that the state was behind it and they did it. We also have microfinance banks, but they are not in the areas where there's a total destitution because it costs too much.
Mm.
So we don't see them. I mean, I would really like to have a lot of now kind of loans for my villages, who are now, each one is becoming quite going way ahead in production of one kind of item that they sell. I mean, we think there are at least 8,000 villages that are now producing something. Now they could do much better if they had a little bit of access to any kind of finance. And I've been talking to my banker friends, and there's no money available for them.
Mm.
It's too small an amount we need. They will
Yeah.
not be able to recoup their whatever expenses even on that. So why should they do it?
Yes. And so in a nutshell, thank you. Like that is an enlightening part of it, you know. Um, and it's really you almost have to be with them, maybe experience them for a day, encounter them for a day, a week, or a month, to really understand the plight of these people. And
Yeah.
obviously I've encountered similar communities with I was born in the Philippines. I've encountered similar communities there. And also, I mean, I live in the US right now, so I've seen the disparity between those communities. But overall, I mean, has been a very enlightening exchange and conversation. Dr. Yasmeen Lari, thank you for grounding
Thank you.
us in four
Thank
zeros: the vernacular intelligence, women's leadership, and open know-how. So these are practical ways to
And
transform.
also, if I may, also my 3Ds that I didn't mention, which
Okay,
is the
what yes.
decolonization, decarbonization, and democratization. If you have three
Yes.
Ds, also it will help a lot. Then you
Mhm.
allow, kind of decision to be made by the community rather than yourself. You listen to their voices more than yourself. That's also important.
Yes, and those are practical ways to transform the existing and leapfrog the new under real climate pressure. So again, once again, Dr. Yasmeen Lari, thank you very much. And
My
then
pleasure. Thank you.
and then for the people listening, links to Dr. Yasmeen Lari's work will be provided in YouTube and the Architect of Things website, and then the resources of the show notes will also be at the Architect of Things website. So if this sparked ideas, share it with someone shaping a building, a policy, or a budget. So this has been Architect of Things. I'm Lira Luis, and thank you for listening.